Welcome in, everybody, to the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got Josh Yohe with The Athletic and comedian Joe Bartnick here. And today we're going to talk some Penguins. We're going to talk a little bit about who's going to be the starting goalie, a couple huge trades the Penguins made last week, and then a certain someone that kind of got floated out up north to Montreal that maybe we would have liked to see in a Penguin sweater. That, some Steelers talk, and then we'll hopefully round out the Josh's travel, unless we want to extend it even further with like the Sopranos. But how you guys doing?
All things considered, I'm doing great. Things are good. Worried about Sid. Definitely more worried about my Steelers, and we're here to do a fun show with Josh. And just great news. I'll let Josh break it, but we said great news about an upcoming show.
Yeah, Joe's worked up about the Steelers. I can feel it from here, and we should say, like we promised some special guests this summer. So I think it's going to be in 2 weeks. Next week's a possibility, depending on our schedules, but it looks like in 2 weeks, the RT Express, Kevin Stevens, will be coming aboard the podcast to talk a little early 90s hockey because, well, that's what we like to talk about and run this thing. So we cannot wait. One of my favorite people in the world. He truly is heart of gold, one of the great Penguins ever. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. He's number 5 on my list, your list. He's number 5.
No question.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you can't break Mount Rushmore. It's like Yankees Mount Rushmore. It's like you just can't do it. So
yeah, there's 4 of them, and then obviously there's the second Mount Rushmore, Mount Rushmore Jr. Yeah, I know. Like I said beforehand, if I could just go back and tell my early '90s self, like, hey, someday you're going to get to interview Kevin Stevens. You're gonna it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about that. I mean. And if you guys fans want to send in some questions, I'm more than happy to take them. Sure. And we'll filter it out. Josh is good with the mailbag, and speaking of the mailbag, the first thing we got to lead off with, it was in your mailbag. Any news on Sidney Crosby? Anything? Have you? I guess the better question is there is no news because we know that. The better question is, have you spoke to anybody in the organization between the last podcast and this podcast, and what do they think?
I have. I believe the expression is all's quiet on the Western Front. There's not really been any talks that I am aware of. At the same time, nobody seems overly concerned, but here we are now. We're recording this on the evening of August 19th, so we are now under a month until training camp starts, and I keep saying it. If he gets to camp without a contract, things get really interesting. And listen, the news could break at any time that it's done, but I am under the assumption that there haven't been talks in a little while, so this could drag out a while longer. Some people say it's a story, some people say it isn't. I think it can be a story, even if I still very much think Sid's going to sign. The longer this goes on, you have to wonder, is there some kind of a conflict? Is Sid just not sure how much longer he wants to play? Could it be something else? Who knows? Maybe it's nothing. I don't know. But all these people, I've had people tweet at me like, they're just waiting until training camp to make a big announcement to get some good publicity. When can't, like, no, that makes no sense. This doesn't help them. Just from a business standpoint, ticket sales, corporate stuff. The longer he goes unsigned, it's not a good thing for anybody. So, of course, I think it's going to happen. But here we are another week and still no contract.
I personally think it's a matter of he doesn't know how much longer he wants to play. I could be completely wrong on that, but that's the theory I'm going with. I don't believe he's going to play anywhere or wants to play anywhere else. So I think it's a matter of, what's he going to, how many years? Because we know he's over 35. That's dead money. Not only does he not want to strangle the Penguins no one will care, but it would be almost like, no one will hold against him, but like Datsuk, he left Detroit on the hook for when he left for the salary cap. So Sid doesn't want to say he's going to, cost him $11 million in 2 years because he just doesn't want to play that year. So he's probably thinking it through. So, as long as he signs before the season starts, I'm good. But I think that's what, because I think if there was a conflict or he was upset, I think, Josh, you would know about it.
Yeah, and I've talked with people who would know and people I trust, and they have assured me that There is no conflict. So, okay, I'll take them at their word. No, Joe, you might well be right. Nobody's really talked about that possibility, but the guy's 37 years old. He's done everything there is to do. He's lived and breathed hockey his entire life. He's been a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins for more than half of his life, literally. He was 17 still when he was drafted. He's 37 now. Maybe the day will come and he just says to himself, I've had to go live the rest of my life and not take the beating anymore. And I never think of Sid in that way because he is obsessed with hockey. I mean, the guy truly, he loves the game. Like in a way Mario didn't. Like I never thought Mario loved hockey that much. I just think
dominating.
He was just born with so much more talent than anyone else. And you're from Montreal. What the hell else are you going to do? Like he didn't love hockey the way Sid does. But that doesn't mean that Sid wants to play until he's, Yager's age and playing. I certainly have never had that sense. So that makes as much sense as anything to me, Joe. We know he'll play next season and play out his contract. I have no doubt he'll play after that, but maybe he's to the point where he only wants 1-year deals from that point. I don't know, but we saw with Michael Jordan when he played the last few years with the Bulls, he would just take 1-year deals. We see it with LeBron. He takes the short-term deals. So when guys get to that age, I get it. It honestly makes sense for everybody involved.
That's what I think. And I just think Dubas is just like, no, we need you for 4 more years. So Sid's like, I'm not going to do that. So, I think that's where the standoff is, but I think it's a friendly standoff because, I just think, because think about it. If he is only committed this year, and he gets his final run with Gino, they get to hit all their favorite sushi spots and take Jesus into the 4 nations and, have the Gretzky passing the torch moment to Jesus. And then, you know what? If he wants to play, he wants. If not, he kind of did it already. Obviously, he's already done everything else.
Right.
I just think he doesn't. I just think he's like, let me think about it here, and I don't want to get pushed into signing something where he looks like the bad guy. I mean, right. I'm in a Ron Cook will come out of retirement to say how he stuck us with a salary. He should never sign that extra year. He's hurting us. It's like.
Well, I will say, I think he will play at least 1 year after next year, simply because my sense in talking with him about it over the years, I really do think he wants to play in the Olympics one last time. I think that means a lot to him. He's going to be the captain of Team Canada if he does. And yeah, he's won 2 gold medals already. I realize that, but the pressure on him is pretty immense to play in that tournament for his country. And it would almost certainly be the last chance he would have to play in the Olympics. So my sense is that's really important to him, and he'll still be playing at that point, which is about 1.5 years from now. I don't know. I have had some conversations with him where I was convinced he would play into his 40s. And the night Chris Letang told me, or when Letang signed a 6-year deal, Sid told me that night, I hope I play all 6 years with him. And that was only 2 years ago. That would take Sid until 40. But there are other people I've spoken with who are close with him who are never convinced that he wants to play forever. So who knows? But I think he wants to play it by year, perhaps. And that's okay. He has earned that right. If he wants a 1 or 2 year contract, okay. That's just something you live with.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of the Olympics, I have thought about that a couple of times. And just think about the absolute legacy. Like, because the Penguins probably aren't competing for Stanley Cup the rest of his career. We hope maybe one.
Certainly not the next year or two, probably, right?
No, but hopefully at the end, maybe they're able to, have a resurgence and make a run at something. But he's got a pressure-packed moment in that. Like, he's won every time he's been on Team Canada. He's led them to gold. It's a legacy cementing moment for international hockey. Not that he needs it, but, to win gold again,
What if Sid would retire next year? Imagine the pressure on McJesus in the Olympics without Sid. Poor McJesus never won anything.
They would just blame Sid, though. Like, how'd he leave Jesus?
Traitor.
Yeah, traitor of the country.
They probably would.
There should be an asterisk anyway, because if they don't have to play Russia. But I won't go on that rant. But, Corey, you're really throwing in the town the next 2 years because we did get Cody Glass. So
that's a great segue, because also don't throw away that upgraded 3rd round to a 2nd round pick that we got. I mean, Josh, I think your tweet summed it up great when that when the Penguins announced that tweet. Everybody's sitting there. People probably have the notification for Penguins tweets, and they see one come out, and it says, "We have traded a 5th round pick in exchange for a 3rd round and a 2nd round."
And that was just the Penguins or the Blues and Penguins getting together because the Blues needed a little bit of help because they felt like throwing a couple of offer sheets in Edmonton's direction. And depending on how that finishes up, they may need that compensation. They needed another 2nd round pick, which happened to be the 2nd round pick they traded to the Penguins 2 months ago. So it does work out for the Penguins. Went from a 5th round pick to a 3rd round pick, and ultimately, even though you have to wait a year to use that 2nd round pick. So I see why Dubas did it for sure. It was the kind of trade you don't see very often. When I first saw it, I kind of did a double take because when I first saw the trade, I wasn't aware of what had gone on with the Blues and the Oilers just minutes before that. So now it makes sense, but that's not a trade you see very often, especially in August. Like, why the hell are their draft picks being flipped? But in this case, that's exactly what it was.
Let's dig into the Cody Glass experience.
Yeah,
I'm worried that this is going to lead to other trades. More distinctly, Lars Eller, because I can count on one hand the amount of people who I thought had better seasons than Lars Eller, or maybe not even one hand.
He was terrific. Yeah.
Not even one hand. And I think he should be a Penguin. And I don't, if you go and got Cody Glass, we didn't really need, to get I'm spacing Kevin Hayes, yes.
Right. Well, the abundance of bottom 6 centers that they have on the roster now is unbelievable. I mean, they literally have like 5 or 6 4th-line centers, which makes you wonder if something's up. I will say this about Eller. If you are interested in winning this season or giving yourself a chance to win this season, he's not the kind of guy you trade. He will help you win if you are a good team. And if you are a playoff team, you absolutely want somebody like him on your team. Now, if we get to March 1st and the Penguins are 8 points out of a playoff spot, then you trade Lars Eller and get, maybe a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, something along those lines. And that makes sense. But to trade him in the summer, if you still want to give this team a chance to win, unless you're getting something really massive in return, I just don't know how much sense it makes right now.
I was shocked he made it through the last trade deadline, to be honest with you. He was like the one guy I thought that was trade worthy.
Why wouldn't a contending team want that guy? I mean,
1,000%. And the other thing, I think Cody Glass is completely serviceable. I think he does make our bottom 6 a little better. He actually is over 6 foot, is over 200 pounds. He's okay. Like, he's pretty good. I'm not knocking him whatsoever, but he's standing in the way of another young guy. So if we all agree, we're probably not going to make the playoffs. Why are we bringing in guys that are going to be not here when we're good?
Well, I will say about Glass, I think these are the kinds of guys they probably should be trying to acquire. This was the former 6th overall pick. He hasn't really panned out, but presumably has some talent. I've seen him play a little bit. I'd be lying if I said I could give a conclusive scouting report on Cody Glass, but I understand why you take a chance on a guy like that. And you also, frankly, helped yourself by getting more draft picks from Nashville because they were in cap hell, which is why they needed to get rid of him. So I'm fine with the addition, but, I assume you're alluding to Sam Poulin is another young guy that's being blocked. And
a lot of guys.
But
Sam, absolutely. I mean, that he'd be first or second on that list. Because think about this, because then they're just they're always saying, but now it's like, well, centers can move to wingers. Well, now you're blocking a winger.
Right.
One or the other, like the Russian kid we want to see. There's wingers we want to see.
And by the way, some players can move from center to wing and wing to center, but most of them actually can't. Most of them have been playing one position their entire career. Like, you ask almost any hockey player, like, hey, could you play the left side if you have to? Oh, yeah, no problem. That's why one of my favorite moments on the beat with Patrick Hornquist years ago, Sully actually moved him to left wing for a game, and he looked terrible. And I was talking to him the next day. I said, left wing? I said, I'm sure you can play left wing if you have to, though, right? That's what all you guys say. He says, bullshit. He says, I told Sully I can't play on the left side. Never put me there again. I'm a right wing. I wish more guys were like that. But no, so they just have a flood of players in the bottom six now. I mean, it's actually going to make camp, I guess, kind of interesting on some level, just because I don't know who their bottom six is going to be, or who the 20 guys on the roster opening night will be. We know the top six if everyone stays healthy, I think, but the bottom six, I mean, you got 6 spots and there's legitimately 10 or 11 guys that could get those jobs. It makes you wonder if one of them will be traded, or if they just want to have a training camp with competition, which is great. The only issue is most of these guys are in their 30s. I'd rather have a training camp with competition with like 22-year-old guys, but that's just where the Penguins are right now.
Yeah, I'd rather see guys fighting to play on Sid's wing than fighting to not be a healthy scratch.
Right.
But at least it'll make my, because I will be out here in California or somewhere on the road with watching the internet feed with the Mets calling the game. So I hope it's worth it. I'd rather see a little competition, but at least Glass, he gets some bigger shoulders. Like I like his game. He's fine. I just was like
flyer.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Take a flyer on him.
I just think Dubas should turn younger guys. I don't know. I think
Glass isn't old. He's only 25. But no, it's going to be an interesting thing. Kyle always tells us, every time you talk with Kyle Dubas, you ask him about his team, the very first thing he will say every time, we need to get younger. And I agree with him. I think we all agree with that. You look at the roster, however, it's not going to be appreciably younger. Maybe a little bit in places, and I appreciate the draft picks that he has acquired. That's certainly a good thing, but there still could be a lot of 30-somethings.
We are the oldest team in the league.
Oh yeah, and it's
by a long shot, right? We're
probably
way far away from the mean.
Yeah, I mean, you never know until opening night when you get everybody's official ages. But yeah, they're old, and I have to name drop for a second. So I like to name drop. I will never forget a conversation I had maybe 10 years ago with the great Phil Esposito, who, if we ever have him on as a guest, we'll need the beat button a lot. But he made a great point to me one time. He said, "You're screwed if you got a bunch of guys in their 30s on your bottom six." He says, "Those guys don't give a shit as much. You want young, hungry guys on your bottom six." I agree with him. I think it's a great point, and I think it's a problem for the Penguins right now.
I've said that for years. I have said that everywhere for years. I want my fourth line to live in a hotel next to the practice facility. I don't want my fourth line guys playing to get their beach house.
Right. I mean, no, there's something. I knew you'd be on the same page as an Italian legend like Phil Esposito.
Hey, Phil. I mean, I love Phil Esposito, and it's perfect for summer programming because all I do is polish the chalice of Phil Esposito every summer. He comes up all the time. But I'll tell you, I don't know, Josh, if you're ever in the arena, or you can put on the radio feed. Everyone listening, listen to Phil Esposito.
Oh my God,
do color on a Tampa Bay Lightning game. It is like watching the game with your dad or your uncle. Jesus Christ. What is he? He can't.
It's unbelievable. It's one of my favorite things during the season, whenever we're in Tampa. I think the Penguins only play in Tampa one time this season. When you're in Tampa, for us anyway, usually we have to leave the press box with about 5 or 10 minutes left so we can get into the locker room right when the game ends. They'll have a TV set up for us downstairs so we can not miss anything. And in Tampa, you don't get the TV. You can watch the video, but you get the radio audio. So you get to hear Esposito. And you will remember the playoff series in 2011 when Sid and Gino were both hurt. The Penguins lost in 7. It was game 4 of that series. James Neal won it in double overtime. And I'll never forget that the Lightning had a defenseman named Eric Brewer, pretty good player, and he iced the puck in overtime. And Esposito right on the air says, "Jesus Christ, Brewer, what are you doing icing the puck again?" I guess there's no rules here in Tampa. Florida's a pretty lawless place, and it was on display then.
Yeah, but it's the grunts and the grunts and jeez. So just like my dad said, "Come on, shoot the puck." He's an older gentleman yelling at the television. That's exactly what he is.
He is absolutely the greatest.
He's the best. One other thing I want to talk about, because it's just crazy. is today Patrick Laine got traded
Yeah.
to the Montreal Canadiens, and it makes my buddy Fraser's Detroit Red Wings have an even harder jump to get in. How hard is the Atlantic now? I mean, every team is just good or getting better. I
Yeah,
mean,
Laine
is
the bottom dwellers.
No, I mean Laine. Listen, he's a wild card. He's obviously had some off the ice issues and hasn't been the same player the last couple of years. But we know how gifted he is, and the one thing the Canadians have lacked is just star power. You know, it's which is weird saying that about the Canadians organization of all organizations. They haven't had any star power other than Carey Price in a really long time. And Laine is a guy that has that potential. He does. So yeah, you're right, Joe. You look at that division. I mean, teams like Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo, they haven't been playoff teams, but they're not pushovers. You know, that they're not. That's not an easy 2 points when you play those teams. They're getting better.
Well, it's like everyone's like, "Oh, this is the year Detroit's going to jump in." But then they never follow up. Well, who's going to fall out? Then you say, "Oh, this is like Buffalo. Wow, you got Thompson." They go, "Oh, they got to make a move." And you see Ottawa. Oh my God, Canadian Press has been begging them to be good. They've been pretending they've been good for a decade, and now Montreal, right? Well, who's falling out? Boston's not falling out now that they made. I think they had a great summer. I'm not as big on Lindholm as other people, but I'm certainly big on Zadorov. Panthers aren't going anywhere. Tampa's not going anywhere.
Toronto's still pretty good.
And Toronto's still pretty good. So it's like,
that's the scary thing, by the way. Yeah, the scary thing, just talking about making the playoffs for the Penguins. That's why it's so hard, because on paper, New Jersey, Carolina, and the Rangers are better than the Penguins. And I'm not so sure the Metropolitan Division gets a wild card just because of what you said, because that Atlantic Division is so good. The East is brutally deep. Like, who stinks in the East? Like, maybe Columbus, I guess.
Columbus does.
Right?
Dean Everson will fire up the tanning bed.
Yeah. Like they stink. I don't think, teams like Philly and Washington, the Penguins aren't great, but they don't stink. The depth of the East is unbelievable to me.
I feel the same way. We've gone over this. People hear it too many times in this show. But I think Jersey, the Rangers, and Carolina definitively better. Yeah. I think Washington and the Fishermen are better. And I think that Tortorella will get the Philly to play harder more times than the Penguins. I think the Penguins are looking at 7th place, barring anything crazy, barring Jari playing well or whatever. I don't know. I just think that's their lot right now. But we have weeks and weeks and weeks to go on it. I have one other thing I want to ask you, Josh, because it came up on my other podcast, and it's funny because I just thought of it now. But speaking of Laine being an off the ice issues, if you will, how did Daniel Sprong only get 9.75 from Vancouver? I see a guy that plays on the 4th line and gets 30 goals, and he needs a better agent. Me and Andy were like, "What's wrong with I mean, does he have any? I don't know any off ice issues." And people say, "Well, I don't." And maybe he takes bad penalties. Like, I've never seen him touch anybody to take a bad penalty. Like, how is he not? I literally said, how did Columbus not give him 2 years at $1.5 million a year? Like,
totally agree. Sprong, I can speak of when he was in Pittsburgh many years ago. Players didn't particularly like him. He's a really weird personality. He didn't really fit in. I think he frustrated the coaches a bit, but there have been no off-ice issues. Patrick Laine is a different kind of guy too. Like there's lots of personalities that, they can't all be Kevin Stevens when it comes to personality, right? I mean, some guys aren't gregarious. That's just life. Sprong always came across as kind of socially awkward, I guess I would say. But Joe, the guy scores goals. He scores goals everywhere he goes. You put him on the power play, man. I mean, it makes a difference. His talent just jumps out at you when you see the guy play. He's been I've lost track of how many different teams he's played on. And it's not like he doesn't care, that he's lazy. I'll never forget a game in Anaheim a few years ago after the Penguins had traded him to the Ducks. He scored a goal in the first period against the Penguins and glared right at Sully as he skated to the Anaheim bench. Like he's got a competitive streak. I'd have given him some money. I think he'd look pretty good on the left circle in the Penguins power play, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just can't believe how goals are a premium. And he's a
Yeah.
fourth line guy, gets 8 minutes a game and has 30.
Yeah, no, I mean he's
And
never gonna win a Selke, but that's okay. You got to score goals, and in Vancouver had a sneaky good summer for a team that's
they
had salary
certainly
cap
did.
issues. That team's really good. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I'm quite impressed with the summer they had.
And they got rid of the Smiths, so they're going to have a good backup goaltending from now on.
Speaking of goaltending, Josh, it did come up in your mailbag, and it was one of the questions that I wanted to bring up. Is Tristan? What's going to happen at net? I mean, is Tristan Jarry your starting goaltender? Is Ned? Is the Penguin social media just pumping him because he's the only one hanging out in Cranberry at the moment? I don't know. Like they've been putting him out, but it's like. Who do you start? I mean, and ultimately it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like
they were tweeting about Ned a lot, weren't they? Very simply because they made Ned available to the media a couple of days ago. That's what the Penguins do whenever anybody's been in the news with a new contract. They strategically once a week will make one available just to kind of stay in the news cycle, and it helps all of us out who like to write stuff in the summer. To answer your question, I think it's certainly one of the most compelling stories in camp. Jarry's always been the number one guy. As we all know, he didn't get a start in the last month of the season. They can say he wasn't in the doghouse. We all know he was. Ned wasn't Patrick Waugh, but he was fine. He was solid. He certainly gave them chances to win every night. I truly believe it's whoever plays better. I mean, I guess I'd make Jarry the odds-on favorite to get the majority of the starts. I think he's more physically gifted. But I'll tell you what, if Ned outperforms him in training camp, you'll see Ned start on opening night against the Rangers. I believe that because they really do have a trust in him. And Jarry, by the way, doesn't often have great training camps. That's something I've noticed with him over the years. He doesn't always look super sharp in practice. Ned had a great camp last year. If that happens again, it would not shock me if they roll with him.
What do you think, Joe? I mean, I know you're not, dialed in watching, all the practices and everything like that, but
it's the sad thing is I watch everything on the internet. I watch the practices
well,
from
as much as you
closed
can.
caption camp.
Do you have like a tap into the Lemieux Center feed? Like
yes, I do every summer. Of course I do. I watch the A team versus C team at 11 a.m., which is like 8 a.m. my time. I think they hope that Jarry does well enough to be traded. And I think it's kind of a showcase for him because obviously his stock wasn't high enough to be traded at the end of last year.
True.
And I
think
he
could have been gone. They would have gotten rid of him by now.
And remember, that is the one position in the organization where they have some young guys on the way. Okay, and I don't think either of them are ready in September. That would be a surprise. But they have a couple of legitimate prospects at that position too. So I could see that if Jarry plays well, trading him. I could also see if Jarry has a terrible year, trying to trade him for anything next summer. Ned is a perfect bridge goaltender. He's a great backup. I don't know if you're going anywhere with him if he's the guy. I just don't know if he's physically good enough. I think he's solid. I think Jarry has a higher ceiling, but as I often say about him, I don't trust him. I don't know that the players or the coaches do. You don't always know what you're going to get from him, especially in big games. I'm sorry, that's an issue with a starting goaltender. That's a really big issue, and he has a lot to prove. Tristan's 29 now. He's not a kid. Maybe this is who he is, a guy who looks incredible for 2 months, and then a guy who looks incredibly bad for 2 months, because that's what we've seen.
I think it says a lot that he wasn't traded.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the league thinks of him.
I think you might be onto something, and I know for a fact the Penguins didn't want to give him that many years or that many dollars last summer. It was a terrible goalie market. They didn't want to be without a starting caliber goalie, so I get it. But they took a chance giving him that kind of cash for 5 years. And if he does not have a good season, I don't even know if he's tradable moving forward, which is an even bigger problem.
Yeah, I don't think I think he has to have a good season for the Penguins and to be traded. I think, and I think it's a big year for his career because I know, Fenway has money, so I don't know if he's eligible for a buyout or whatever, but I don't think he can stink like
it could be. And remember, you still don't want to do that though. Buyouts are still, sometimes they're appropriate, but oftentimes they're not. So that puts you in a bad spot too. You don't want to be paying the guy something for the next 6 years either. So it's just a
But if he
very
doesn't play for a month and a half,
listen.
it's like
From what I've been told, they would have been willing to trade him this summer. I absolutely believe that from everything I've heard. I just don't think there were any takers.
Yeah, that's to back up your point there, Joe. It doesn't sound too good for Tristan Jarry. I just hope, I don't think Ned's going to be the guy, but I'm kind of excited. Like, Ned will be a good, solid guy. He's not going to win you a Stanley Cup, but I'm really excited about the young guys. Like I'm ready to see that. This kind of reminds me of, I remember when Flower was, the guy, like the young guy, and it was like, oh my God, I never checked Wilkes-Barre as much as I did whenever Flower was playing down there after, in his rookie year and stuff. So, I
think that's what I'm feeling. And that's what I was kind of mentioning in the Cody Glass thing. I'm ready for the young guys.
Yeah,
I'm ready to see a spark. It's like, you're ready to.
Could not agree more.
As the great Mike Lang said in the Penguins Stanley Cup video, whenever he was talking about, you had to have some people in house coming up, some hungry young guys, and we finally had that in 2015-16. So yeah, exactly, Joe. Again, to your point, you don't want that guy working on his beach house in the fourth line.
No.
We'll that'll do it for the first segment. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit of Steelers, and then after that, we'll round out Josh's travel tips. But first, Josh, we have the Reg Dunlap of insurance. If you guys don't know that, he lives here in Pittsburgh, so you should go meet him. And Josh, take it away. Let them know who he is and where they can find him.
Yeah, I like how he sends me little nuggets every week that, just not that we can't figure out how to advertise the man, but he always has little nuggets. This is a good one too. He wanted to call it like the power play tip of the week, and then he said, I want to call it the shoot the damn puck, tip of the week, but I don't want to be. He doesn't want to be too Yinzer, I guess. So whatever, but there's little thing that we should mention. Neofus Insurance, they're located in the North Hills, real close to the mall. Actually, I visit the great Reg Dunlap of the insurance world quite often, and he wants to remind us, and he's right. This is the time of year when families are moving their kids back to college. A couple of things to be aware of that they can help you out with. If they are staying at a college or university provided housing, they will not need renter's insurance to cover their personal belongings. The contents coverage from most homeowner policies will extend to cover a student's personal property in school-provided housing. My kids are 12 and 10. I didn't know that. If they are renting in an apartment off campus, however, they definitely will need renter's insurance to cover their personal belongings, potential liability, and exposure. Renter's insurance is only $15 to $20 a month, so give the good folks at Neofus Insurance Group a call. 412-364-3388, or you can find them online, neofusinsurance.com. You got to trust us on this. These are quality human beings. I've met people there. Bill's a dear friend. He will help you out, no question. So once again, thank you to Bill for being our first ever sponsor, the Reg Dunlap of the insurance world.
Tap of the stick to Bill. I'm going to have to give him a call because my daughter just went to Berkeley 2 days ago.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Humble brag there. I like it.
Well, did the apple fall far from the tree? Yeah, somebody picked it up and threw it. I can't even really spell Berkeley.
Your wife must be a smart woman.
She is a smart woman.
when you write,
I mean, she just has bad judgment.
Obviously.
Good stuff. Yeah, thanks to Neofus Insurance. And so on the second segment here, we're going to talk about the Steelers. The Steelers had a preseason game that looked rather ugly. I mean, it was a 9-3
Rather,
game.
Take a stand. It was terrible.
It was.
It looked like Matt Canada was still coaching us.
Here's the
even
only
worse.
Thing. Yeah, it did. Because last year with Matt Canada, we looked like unstoppable in the preseason, and that's the only takeaway that I could glean from it was that I said, my father-in-law asked me on Sunday, what did you think of the game? Knowing that was the first thing coming up. I said, well, last year I thought Kenny Pickett was on his way to potentially becoming an elite quarterback, and we might be Super Bowl contenders just from the preseason. It's the opposite now. So maybe that means, and then we get in the regular season, we stunk last year. So maybe this year we're gonna look like crap in the preseason, and then Danger Russ is gonna get unleashed on the league. I don't know. It looks so bad.
Scariest thing to me was Broderick Jones, because here's my guy from Georgia. I love all SEC guys. Last year he comes in, he kicks ass. He's like the one-man gang come in or clean the house. Now guys ran through him. And they're saying, well, he's switching sides. Well, play him in his regular position, the one he played at Georgia and won a national championship. They're worrying about Dan Moore Jr. First of all, Dan Moore Jr., no one needs to use the word junior if no one knows who your freaking dad is. It's Frank Sinatra Jr. It's Bruno Sammartino Jr. It's not Dan Moore Jr.
JFK Jr. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Never looked at it that way. That's a good point. No, it makes no sense at all. I mean, I understand maybe if it's a regular season game and you think those are your two best tackle options since your first round picks hurt, but it's a preseason game. The guy did not play left tackle last season. Why would you not play him at left tackle if that's where you're planning on playing him when the season starts? So it makes no sense from a coaching standpoint, but I was also troubled by how he was pushed around. We didn't see that at all last season, Joe. I thought he was
he
really
got
good.
Thrown around.
Like you'll recall, the second he was inserted into the lineup, the offensive line was better. And his run blocking is really what you notice. But I didn't think his pass blocking was terrible either. Not like what we saw the other night.
He made that guy look like Lawrence Taylor.
I know. It was like the Reggie White movie, kept using on one arm, just knocking him out of the way. Like, what the hell's going on, Broderick?
That was one thing. But then, like, the guy who's going to be at Trader Joe's ran through him, too.
I know. So, I mean, the whole offense was concerning to me. But you mentioned Russell Wilson. I know a lot of people were down on what they saw from him. I can't really gauge what he did because he had somebody in his face almost every throw, Joe. I mean, people say, he's taking the check down. I'm like, well, yeah, because he's getting killed every time he goes back to throw. I mean, I wasn't appalled by anything that I saw from him. I just, it's hard for me to judge a quarterback when he's under that kind of pressure.
I agree 1,000%. I don't feel any worse about Russell Wilson than I did before the game started. But I will say this: if they're not going to block anybody, then they got to play Fields. At least he can run for his life faster.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and you see, I mean, with Fields, the running talent is obvious. I mean, you see it when the guy takes off. It's like, whoa, like a guy that big who can move like he can. It gets your attention. It's interesting to me, like all the local people I know who cover the Steelers, they will tell you with 100% certainty that Russell Wilson is going to be the quarterback in Atlanta on September 8th. This isn't even a debate to them. But the national reporters, all you hear about every day on ESPN is, I think Justin Fields might be the guy. I think Fields has the infield track. I don't get that. I think they clearly are going to start Wilson. Now, if he struggles and they're 1-4 through 5 weeks, can we see Justin Fields then? Yeah. That certainly wouldn't surprise me. But if the offensive line is going to look anything like it did the other night, it's literally not going to matter.
No.
Especially the way they want to play, Joe. They want to pound the ball and use that offensive line, all those first-round picks. That's great. But the run blocking looked awful as well the other night.
No, it was
nowhere to go.
It was a terrible display. The thing with the national media is, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Lakers, the Yankees.
That's right.
ESPN's going to talk about them no matter what, because that's where most, like half the country's going to pay attention. You say Steelers quarterback controversy. So they don't really care what they'll throw lies out like a news organization. They don't really care. So that's where that comes from, but Kabali and, those guys are going to know. I can't see how Russell's not going to get the first chance.
I think that's clearly the plan. And who knows? Like Corey said at the start of the segment, Kenny Pickett looked unbelievably good in the preseason. We were all thinking, oh, man, we might really have something here. Then, of course, it turns out the offense and Pickett were terrible. You cannot always judge a team by what you see in the preseason. And in Wilson's case, he also didn't practice the first 10 days of camp. So I'm certainly willing to give him some time. But man, if I'm Brandon Ayuk and I was sitting in my living room in San Francisco watching that game, I don't want any parts of playing on that offense. I mean, geez, it was just an abysmal display. That was one of the worst football games I've ever spent 3 hours watching.
Yeah, it was. I remember they said like no one got over the 50 until like almost the end of the first half.
Yeah, I believe Bob Pomp dropped that. You could tell Pomp was a little bored. He's like, "Oh God, finally somebody got past the 50."
Well,
yeah,
and I was gonna say, I mean, with the Matt Williamson and Dale Ollie on their podcast, The Drive, we're talking a little bit about, and I kind of do believe that this is a good theory, but it's like almost like the preseason has much more become spring training, where it really doesn't matter. They're obviously pushing towards a two preseason schedule with 18 regular season games.
Yeah.
What's his name? The Rams head coach wasn't even coaching. He was up on the booth, like for their preseason game. You know what I mean? Like nobody cares. So part of it could be like they're not going to show anything. And Dale Ollie said, like in spring training, if you're working on your changeup and you maybe only throw that pitch, 10% of the time, you might throw it 80% in that game and get hammered, but you're just trying to throw the changeup, So it still didn't look great.
I want to disagree with Dale Lally, and he's a nice gentleman. And first of all, I mean, Daryl Sutter used to sit next to me in the and watch preseason games. So that doesn't mean they're not paying attention because no one cared more than Daryl Sutter. But you know what? I understand you keep everything vanilla, but like the Emperor Chaz Nolan said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but in the end, it comes down to blocking and tackling. And they didn't block and they didn't tackle anybody. And if you're doing 2 days and you're in the heat up in St. Vincent's and you're not doing it in preseason game 2, what makes you think they're going to do it the week before Halloween? That was a disgrace. I've been watching them for 50 freaking years. That was usually the preseason guys actually hit people. Their run blocking is efficient. That was like tiddlywinks.
I thought it was interesting. Bill Belichick, who now doesn't have a coaching job, has suddenly become a media darling, going on all these different shows. He was on with McAfee today. I don't know if you guys saw that, but
he did.
Pat being a Yinzer asked Bill what he thought about the Steelers, and Belichick said Russell Wilson will be fine. That defense will be fine. He said that offensive line. You could tell Belichick didn't think much of that offensive line just from what he saw. And of course, he coached against the Steelers forever, including a game late in the regular season last year. He said, if they don't, basically what we just said, if they don't have an offensive line, that they have serious problems. He wasn't worried about Russell Wilson at all. He actually spoke really highly of him. But, Belichick might not be our favorite person, but I think we agree he knows a thing or two about football. And he certainly noticed the same thing we did with that offensive line. And I think who's the offensive line? Pat Meyer, I think, is the coach of the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think he knows what he's doing? Like, I think that's a valid question, especially when you see guys leave the Steelers offensive line and become Pro Bowlers like we saw last season. I think that's I don't really criticize Tomlin as much as people on Twitter think I do. I think Tomlin's a really good coach. I have been critical a lot of his staff and of some of the staffs he's hired over the recent years. And I think moments like this, you kind of see it because there is talent on that offensive line. And what we've seen in the postseason, it's not good.
Imagine having a Munchak with this offensive line, because remember how good the offensive line was under Munchak, and he was taking, not like scrap heaps, but he was taking, not two first round tackles and making them into a Pro Bowl, caliber line. I mean, but it's weird that was the most disappointing I ever was an assistant coach leaving, because he left for a lateral job, not even an upgrade.
Right.
Didn't speak highly. It didn't speak well to the culture, maybe, for the assistant coaches. I don't know, but yeah, Pat Myers. I don't like what are you doing at this point? It's kind of like Andy Haynes. Him and Andy Haynes could go probably hang out and talk.
Is Andy Haynes the special teams coach?
No, he's the pitching the hitting coach for the Pirates.
Oh, I could care. Well, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, he should go. Maybe he should teach special teams. And I don't care how much gum the guy can stick in his face. How about telling someone not to block someone in the back?
By the way, speaking of blocks in the back and special teams, this new kickoff really sucks. Like, it's really boring. There's just nothing there. Like, the NFL athletes compared to maybe the XFL or other leagues, they're just too good. I don't think there's going to be many returns for touchdowns or anything exciting.
And you have to announce, like, give a formal letter when you're going to have an onside kick.
Stupid. I know.
It really does, Josh. You're right. I mean, I was like, okay, maybe this will bring back the exciting play. And now it just looks like, that first down run up the gut that like
Yeah.
doesn't produce anything. And you're just like, yeah, okay. So
As a Steeler fan, I've seen that a million times.
1 yard in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
hopefully it's usually supposed to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
It's 1 yard, even though Najee has to break 3 tackles before he gets that 1 yard.
No, and he looks good. He's
he
running
does.
hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I know, and Jalen Warren being out isn't going to help them either if he misses the opener. He's certainly still a weapon. So
honestly, that second receiver made a couple of nice catches. The guy they're worried about, we have number 2 receiver, and then he was wide open when they missed him in the end zone. So he might not be that bad.
Might be. We'll see. So yeah, I don't know. They've got 3 weeks to get their act together before they head south to Atlanta. We'll see. And they have started slow a lot under Tomlin the last few years. The problem with that is they got the easy games in their schedule in the first 2 months, all those divisional games in Kansas City in the last 2 months. So they better get off to a fast start if they want to be a playoff team. Boy, they have not looked like that caliber. I know it's preseason. I know TJ didn't play. I get that, but I think very concerning is how I would describe what we've seen in the first 2 games.
First time in years, I'm not going to take the over.
Oh, really? You're going to go for? You think they're?
I'm not. No, I never bet against the Steelers.
But you're just not going to take it. Yeah.
What is it? 8.5?
I think it's 8.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a consistent, easy bet.
It's hard to look at that schedule and see 8 wins or 9 wins.
It's a nasty schedule. I know. It is. I mean,
the only way that they honestly do have become a legit playoff team is we see something something happens. We see something in the regular season that we're not seeing now.
Yeah, Burrow and Lamar Jackson get hurt.
That could. But I mean, as far as like the Steelers themselves, like the only way that this team is a contender is there has to be something that happens in the regular season. Like I remember Ben's rookie year. Like we didn't have high hopes for that team. And Tommy Maddox wasn't going to take us anywhere, and then he gets hurt, and we go on that run with Ben. So it's like there has to be, the only way we have success is if there's something that happens that no one's expecting.
I disagree. That team was so much better than the team we have now, and Tommy Maddox was pretty good until he got killed by the ghost of Hank Williams Sr.
Well, yeah, but
see, Hank Williams Jr. is a guy because his dad was Hank Williams, not Dan Moore. Oh, Dan Moore works down at Sherman Williams selling paint. Yeah, that Dan Moore. Yeah, his kid's playing tackle.
But honestly though, in 2004, like we didn't know how good that defense was. We knew that we had some promising players. Like Polamalu had a relatively rough rookie year in 2003. We
had a killer offensive line. We had the bus. We had Polamalu. We had great outside linebackers. We had good D line. We were a much better team. Here's who we have now. We got Joey Porter Jr. Hey, look, another guy's allowed to be junior because his dad is actually famous. we got Minka on defense. We have the white guy that's always hurt when it really matters, and we have an aging Cam Hayward. That's what we got on defense. I like Queen, but Queen didn't show me much. And he didn't hit. He tackled. He went backwards. Queen's supposed to be in there cracking skulls. And then we have an offense. We got 30 tight ends, but none are any good really.
Right.
Our offensive line stinks. We have 2 quarterbacks. It means we have none, and we have a guy that can't catch a pass inbounds. The number 1 receiver. That's our offense.
I keep going back to the coaching staff. I think there's so many questionable people on the staff, and that 2004 team's a good example. You know who came back to the Steelers in 2004? Dick LeBeau.
Yep.
I assure you, Dick LeBeau's not running this defense. So I don't know. They often exceed expectations. They have a way about them in doing that, but it's hard to feel great about this offense right now. There's a lot of things need to happen for this offense to even be okay.
This is the first 2 for talking when I feel like I've been negative. So, Sid, please sign so I can at least start out segment 1 in a good mood.
Like, honestly, Joe, I was thinking about it, and it made me think about whenever Madden's article, was about, he wrote an article about the Steelers not looking great. And I think he made a comment to somebody who was like replying to it, and he said, like, they're not, like, it's okay that they're not good, and like that's kind of how I feel about all the Pittsburgh teams right now. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's trying to think up a way of how we're gonna be good, and it's like it's okay to be not good. Like, that's fine. Like, they're not always gonna be the greatest, and I don't know. I mean, people in Pittsburgh, they don't want to call, like, and I root for them harder than anybody. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not sitting there being like a fair weather fan. It's just, you got to kind of manage your expectations heading into the season, and it's just a weird time in Pittsburgh sports. Like, it's kind of like the Pirates, how they've always been. So meh. I don't know, like post, I don't know, 2002, 2003 Penguins. It's kind of what it feels like, and like Kent Graham level Steelers. Like, I don't know, like
It's
just
not good all at the same time. It's a real problem. We haven't had this since the mid '80s, probably.
Yeah, I would say the mid '80s.
All three teams were on
but
shaky
we
ground.
still had Lemieux, and that's why we still have Sid. I think the biggest thing in the mid 2000s that was bad was that the Penguins couldn't leave. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And the Steelers are going to bounce back. The thing that makes this tough, and the Pirates don't count. The thing that makes this tough is I'm going to watch every game anyway.
Yeah.
So whether they're good or bad, I mean, we all have to sit through it. So but I love it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun when it's for real. It's hard to get the juices flowing. As awful as it was, it's kind of fun to be upset about it. But you're not heartbroken because it was the preseason. So things will be better when TJ's playing and killing somebody. There'll be a little more hope. It'll be a little more hope. But
ruin your
they got to block someone or find someone that will. So.
Yeah. No question.
Yeah.
It's like that was the problem. They didn't block anyone.
No toughness, which is, I mean, it like a Pittsburgh team, you have to show toughness, and yeah, it's just it's an ugly time, and I don't know. But I will, I'll be living and dying with them every moment along the way. I keep looking towards, I hate to say this, but because I don't know if Russell's the guy. I don't know if Justin Fields is going to be the guy. But, you got somebody like an Arch Manning, who, let's see how he does in college. But like,
you're looking at the quarterbacks down the road. I like it.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of like, okay, who's the guy? Who's the next guy that's coming out? And when can we position ourselves? Because you don't want to be number one overall. It worked out for Peyton Manning, but you want to get like Steelers got Ben in 11. With the Chiefs took Patrick Mahomes at like 10. I think they traded up for him. Josh Allen was around 11 or something like that. Like, you want to be in that area.
Well, we already know if the Steelers say they do lay an egg this year, they go 6-11, whatever. Neither quarterback plays well. Oh my God. All we're going to be talking about is what quarterback are the Steelers going to draft next spring. That's going to dominate all discussions, and perhaps rightfully so in this case. Yeah. If you don't have that position, that doesn't matter.
We can all laugh about this. Corey, keep this tape for our 1000th episode. I would like to see them get Michael Penix Jr.
Really?
I think I watched him play a lot of ball up in Washington because I'm in Pac-10 territory and all the games are over and I'm still watching football Saturday. I know he had some injury issues, but he can throw the football around, and he's like 35 already. He's a man.
I saw somebody took the film of him and flipped it so it looked like he was righty. They did the inverse, because there is a bias with a lefty quarterback. We all have a little bit of a bias. If you watch him as a righty, you're like, oh my God, that's the best quarterback that's coming out of college in the last 20 years. But he's a lefty, and I swear there's a bias there. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a reason Atlanta took him at 8, or that was 8, right? They took him 8 overall.
Somewhere a little down, but in the top, the 15. Yeah. I know. Anyway,
yeah.
Guys went before him. I guess the kid in Chicago, but this is preseason, so even Kenny looks good in the preseason. So we'll see. But I like that Penix kid. I think he could have been whatever. Let Russell play a couple years, then get Penix or whoever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Lost.
All right. Well, yeah, that'll do it for the second segment. We'll wrap up here with a short little. Looks like we're gonna stretch the top 10 into a 2-episoder. So we'll go number 10 through 6 on Josh's top 10 of places to travel this year if you're a Penguin fan on the road. We'll talk about that and more on the third segment of Two for Talking. Welcome back to segment number 3 of Two for Talking, and Josh's annual travel guide for the Penguins fans. We're at the top 10, so we're gonna go 10 through 6 here, and then Joe's got to get off to a gig and tell some jokes, some funny dick jokes.
Don't blame me for dragging this out, Corey.
No. It's the fact that we could talk about Sid for a half an hour every week. But so Sid, sign your contract.
AJ has long hair in these episodes now. Dragged out.
So Raleigh is number 10, and I gotta say I was just there. And my cousin lives in Raleigh. It's a nice place. Like you kind of said in the article, wouldn't expect much of a wild nightlife. But I tell you, for somebody in their late 30s who's got a couple young kids, it's a nice little town.
Raleigh is not exciting. It's not New York City. It's not Vegas. I always put Raleigh in the underrated division because every time I go there, I'm like, I just like it here. The weather's always nice. Like there's no hassles in Raleigh. There's no traffic. The weather's nice. Half the people in Raleigh are from Pittsburgh anyway, so you kind of feel like you're at home. Everything's cheap. Great barbecue at all the restaurants if that's your thing. It's pretty easy to get tickets there still, even though they have more fans than they used to. I just find Raleigh's a very underrated place. If you're there when it's warm, it's only a 2.5 or 3 hour drive to the Outer Banks. You go enjoy yourself at the beach. I'm a Raleigh fan, Joe. I don't know how many gigs you've done there over the years. What you think?
I've only been to Raleigh once, but I've been to Charlotte a ton of times. They're two different cities, but I think they're almost kind of the same thing. Very pleasant. Just pleasant.
Everybody's nice too.
Yeah, It's really easy. There really is no traffic. It's hard. It's like, and then I don't know if they feel this way in Raleigh. Maybe they don't because they have the NHL team, but they're always like kind of defensive when you're like, yeah, it's a nice little city. Like, oh, we have a higher population than whatever names. And I'm like, okay, where are they at? I don't see anybody here. I'm glad it's not crowded. I'm glad there's no one around. It just you don't feel like you're in like a big populated area ever in North Carolina.
No, you don't.
It felt like to me when we were there, like the whole city, there is no skyscrapers, nothing like that. It's like the whole city is like the nice part of Oakland, like Oakland and Pittsburgh, like all the good parts of Oakland. It's like that just goes on forever. That's the entire city to me,
Well, there's no nice parts of Oakland, California. So I knew you were talking about Oakland side of Pittsburgh.
I only drove through it once and I was terrified. I never wanted to go back.
Imagine being the director of photography on that Brad Pitt movie, Moneyball, which great movie, by the way. But you sit there, you're a director of photography on a Brad Pitt film, and you show up to scout the location, and you go, "Oh my god, like we got this bridge, some industrial sites. Like, we're gonna change."
News trucks would always get robbed in Oakland, all the time, really? All the time. Yeah,
I believe it.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, number 9 on your list is, as the Canadians say, Calgary. Calgary lands at number 9 on your list in the underrated division.
I always say if the city of Pittsburgh made love to the city of Denver and they had a love child, it would be Calgary, because Calgary looks like Denver. Got the beautiful mountains. It's just it's one of those cities you fly in and you're looking out the window on your plane. It's like, damn, that's a good looking city. If you like the mountain life, like in Denver, very similar city to Calgary. And yet downtown Calgary, something about it reminds me of Pittsburgh. It's all very walkable, bunch of great restaurants, friendly Canadians everywhere. Don't know how many times you've been to Calgary either, Joe. I know it's probably not a common stop, but I love that town.
I've been to Calgary like 2 or 3 times. I love Calgary, the Calgary organization. I think it's fantastic in Calgary. It's a big people city. They got big drinks. They got big steaks. Everybody's cool. You say Denver, it kind of reminds me of like if Dallas was in Canada. It's kind of like
similar. Yeah.
It's kind of like Texas, but not the Texas a-holes. They're like Canadians.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. Right. It's a less macho version maybe of Texas. I think that's a good call. Great steakhouses in Calgary, and I always say some people will tell you it's a dump and it sucks. I love the Saddle Dome. It is such of a cool place to see a game. there aren't really any old buildings left. I think it's the Saddle Dome and MSG. That's about it. The Saddle Dome, like, yeah, it's falling apart, whatever. But I'm telling you, the atmosphere there is so cool. If you ever get a chance to see a game, whether the Penguins are there or not, if you're ever in Calgary for work or vacation, whatever, try to see a game there. You just don't get that old school atmosphere anywhere else.
Yeah, I've never seen a game there, but I just read, I think last week they broke ground on the new arena, which they were, everyone in Pittsburgh knows those fights. They finally got a shovel in the ground. So congratulations. It's a great city. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you can, maybe a lot of people go do all three, make the Canadian trip, but it's a great city. Yeah, I give it my full endorsement to go, especially for a couple of days. Or if you're a big skier and you want to go hit some of the mountains over there, stop in Calgary and have a big steak and a big bourbon. I have nothing bad to say about Calgary. Not that I'm looking to be negative. I have something positive this week here.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Calgary is I've never been to the game there, but I've watched a lot of their games. On the late broadcast, watching on the NHL package, and I love watching games in their arena. Like, I feel like their crowd has to be one of the better crowds in the league. It's as close to rooting for a Canadian team as I can possibly come. It's Calgary.
Yeah, they are. And a couple of other things. When they score goals, they shoot out these flames. It's real flames. You can actually feel the heat in the press box. Like, it's just a cool thing. And another thing about Calgary, if you're a Pittsburgh fan and you go to a game there, you will feel at home. You will feel welcome, because people in Calgary, it's the one city really where they all hate Gretzky because of the whole Flames Oilers thing. There's a ton of Penguins fans, a ton of Mario fans in Calgary, just because they wanted to be anything opposite of Gretzky in the 80s, and they just cheered for the Penguins ever since. So there's always some like anti-Gretzky, pro-Lemieux sentiment in Calgary, which I know we all like.
That's a deal. I'm going to Calgary with a sign that just says Gretzky sucks. Number 8 on the list, we're now in the America Knows a Good Time division, is Anaheim, California, with pretty close to Joe Bartnick there. We're getting in Joe territory.
Yeah.
Orange take County, it away, Joe.
Orange County is great. I live in Los Angeles County, which means it's traffic hell to get there. You're probably, I tell you, if this is the travel log, if you're coming out to see a game, stay down in Orange County at the beach and enjoy some of the greatest beaches in America and on earth down there. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be cheap. And then watch the game. Because if you think you're going to hang out in Los Angeles and drive down to the game, it's not going to work out for you. It's kind of like 2 different vacations, because I actually took the train a couple of times because I'm like, I can't sit in 2-hour traffic to go see the Penguins play the Ducks. And the other thing is, bring a winter coat, because they keep that arena colder than you ever go to the convenience store and like the beer zone, and you can go inside the beer zone's -5 degrees. I felt like I was getting whenever you go freeze, when you freeze to cake. Yeah. I'm really brain dead today. I've gone when you go
cryo.
Cryotherapy in that arena. It's that cold. But the best thing of it being that cold is they have by far the hottest ice girls. And it's a family-friendly show, so I will say that imagine the cold weather does wonders for those ladies, and they're dressed accordingly. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff down in Orange County.
Joe, when I do the California swing, I always stay in Anaheim. It's nice and peaceful. There's not as much traffic in that area. The beautiful beaches around there. You're right. I always try to get to the beach when I'm there. I usually just drive up to LA for the game and come back. I think Staples Center, or whatever they call it now, is a nicer venue than the Honda Center for sure. But the Duck Pond is just kind of less hassle. It's a lot easier to get tickets.
Right.
Everything about it. There's not as much traffic in that area. It's pretty friendly area. So some of the downtown LA is not always the safest spot in the world. Orange County is pretty safe. It's I always tell people, if you get a chance to do the California trip or to go see the Penguins out west, obviously see them in LA and Anaheim, but I always give Anaheim just a nudge because I just love the beaches around there. There's not as much traffic in that area. So Joe's the pro on that one, but I always rank Anaheim a little higher than LA. But
the Duck Pond is nice. I think Staples Center is a better venue, but
it is.
But the Duck Pond is nice. I'm just saying, if you're flying out from Pittsburgh to see both, pick your hotel in Orange County and see the game and enjoy that experience. And then you want to go up to Hollywood and LA and Venice Beach and Malibu. Do it. Change hotel venues because that drive just sucks, and there's not real like tailgating anyway around the Duck Pond. So
no, like I remember, I mean, like 15 years ago or whatever, whenever I first went to Anaheim, I've been in LA a lot, and then first time I went to Anaheim, and I called my wife afterwards, and she goes, "What's it like?" I'm like, if we live in California, we're living in Anaheim. Like I love it in Anaheim. And a little life hack for people who I've spent a lot of time out in California just for work. If you are going out there with young kids, the best thing to do is to take them to Disneyland. We took our son at 3.5. We could have taken him to Disney World and just spent, like we could have maxed out our credit cards to go to Disney World.
And you will.
And you wouldn't have known the difference. You go to Disneyland, it's the equivalent of like a really, really like a big, somewhere between Cedar Point and Kennywood. That's the size. They're not big, but you get the Disney experience. The tickets aren't crazy. They're nice little parks.
Yep.
And you're in and out. And like our son's just like, he was like, "Oh my God, I went to Disney." We're like,
I should have mentioned that. That's absolutely right. And it's on Catella Avenue, about 2 miles from the Duck Pond, I believe.
Yep.
So if you're out there with your family, yes, it makes all the sense in the world to do that. That's certainly a nice perk of Anaheim.
Disneyland's definitely nicer than Disney World as far as just like easy convenience. My daughter was in Princess Phase for 5 years. We had season passes. I know. But here's an even bigger life hack. If you don't have kids, come out and go to Knott's Berry Farm. Knott's Berry Farm has an old school wooden roller coaster that I swear on Ange, I like even if not more than the Thunderbolt.
Oh my!
Whoa,
those are big words.
It's incredible, and I know my bad back. I still ride it twice because it's that. It's the only wooden roller coaster I've ever seen that like kind of feels like it speeds up. It's like a wooden roller coaster. It's kind of in the vein of the new coasters. It's insane. It's right when you walk in. It's called like I think the Ghost Rider. It's right when you walk in, and then they have all the other rides. But then they have the world's best fried chicken.
Ooh.
That's how the amusement park got started. The fried chicken was so good. People waited so long for this lady's for Knott's, Mrs. Knott's fried chicken that they built a Ferris wheel for people to have something to do while they waited in line to get the fried chicken.
Jeez.
And then they invented this thing called the boysenberry. I think it's called the boysenberry. It's a combination of berries, and they give you the pie. And you can get it to go. You can get whatever you want, but they have a restaurant. You sit down like a 6-course meal, like you're in like a southern meal. It's incredible. Josh, we should do that when you come out. Let's do that when you come out for the Penguins. We'll go to Knott's Berry Farm. Yeah, it's in. The best was one time we took my daughter and her friends. We went and I went with them, because I'm a big kid. Just to ride the couple roller coasters.
This is big because if I'm not mistaken, the Penguins play in LA on a Monday. Then they don't play in Anaheim till a Thursday. So we got a couple days in between where I got nothing to do.
And my wife will come down and just to get. So literally, my wife's like, "Okay, I'll go back and get the car. You guys wait in line to get the chicken to go."
I like it.
She comes in like half. Like, what? I'm like, well, you might as well just have like one piece. It's still going to be a long car ride home in the traffic. My wife comes in. There's just like 3 of us attacking the big bag of chicken like animals. It's the best.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Everybody, now you're going to have a bunch of Yinzers at Knott's Berry Farm.
I'm telling you, and they have they have a good kiddie section if you have kids, and just if you want to like just cleanse yourself of the Disney experience one day and have a little adult chicken. Go do that.
There we go. That's we'll have to have somebody sponsor the meetup. That I think there's going to be a meetup, a Pittsburgh meetup if you're going to those games. But number 7 on the list is Florida, the Stanley Cup champs, you can go see them. So you can't beat that. Miami's a good little town.
Well, I just honestly, Miami's not that close to where they play in Sunrise.
No.
It's a good hour. I find though Fort Lauderdale one of the most entertaining places in the world. I can just walk around and people watch in Fort Lauderdale all night long, and I'm very happy. I get a kick out of it. You're only a half hour from the beach, so you can go to the beach in December. It doesn't get much better than that. You can see the Stanley Cup champions play. Really great building. It's one of the most underrated buildings in the league. Really great place. For whatever reason, the Penguins and Panthers I find always play really entertaining games. And from Pittsburgh, it is so easy to get to Florida. We have so many cheap direct flights to Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, whatever. It's just so easy. Hotels are not really outrageous there compared to anywhere else. So I always enjoy the Florida trip. I wouldn't like it if it was in June, but when you're there in January, it's not so bad.
The arena is fantastic. It's kind of interesting. It would be I would kind of say it'd be kind of be like in I don't know, like Peters Township. Or I'm trying to think of what Pittsburgh it would be.
My alma mater. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what it would be, or it would be like like it would be like if it was like if you went to the Waterworks Mall or the Waterworks, whatever that plaza is.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's kind of just like in the middle of like not a big mall, but just kind of, like Village Square. It's kind of like like between South Hills Village Square, and it's kind of like around the old Kaufman's. Kind of feels like you're in that like on 19. That's kind of where the arena's at. It's like a half hour from the beach. I love Fort Lauderdale, and I love playing down there. I do tons of gigs around that area, and there's so many Northeastern people from Jersey, New York, Philly, Pittsburgh. They have the best sandwich shops around. I gain 10 pounds every time I'm there. There's just just great Italian delis. So go get a big hoagie, sit on the beach, and go see. And there's real hockey. I know they won this year, but before that, there's real hockey fans down there. It's a great arena. It's pleasant. I said that word twice on the show. It's just a nice place to watch a game.
It is. There's literally 5 or 6 Steelers bars in Fort Lauderdale, by the way. I've been to a couple of them. It's incredible how many Pittsburghers are in Florida. And yeah, it's I always recommend people do that trip. It's still not that hard to get tickets there. It won't cost you anything like it will in Toronto, and it's good for the soul to get in the warm weather in the winter. And it's actually one of my favorite buildings in the league. I really like it there.
Yeah, it's funny. When you drive up to it, it's like, where is this arena? Because you feel like you're just like parking at a TJ Maxx.
Right. That is really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, I always underestimate how far away it is from Miami, but I was in Miami for something, and I was in my Uber at one point, and I said to the guy, he's talking to me about, it was during the NBA finals or whatever, when Miami made that run a couple years ago, and he's talking about Jimmy buckets, and I said, hey, there's a game tonight. Can you swing by and drop me off there? And he goes, oh no, it's really far away from here. I was like, okay, never mind.
But no, that is an interesting fact. Not to get into the minutia of my comedy career, but you think, oh, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, West Palm Beach. It's like you can't do 3 shows in one night. It's like there's like an hour in between each. And I live in Los Angeles. The traffic and the bad driving on 95 in Florida. There's literally a wreck every 10 miles. There's a wreck. I don't know how it is flat and straight. How these people run into each other, I have no idea.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I always tell people I see more wrecks in Florida than I see anywhere else by far, especially in Lauderdale. You cannot drive on 95 for 5 minutes without seeing a car broke down or a wreck. I think it's a combination of a lot of old people in Florida and a lot of cocaine in Florida. You put it all together, a lot of things going on. Yes, be careful if you're driving down there. In all seriousness, be very, very careful. It is a lawless, strange place in that way.
Right, though, Josh, like if you go 30 miles, you're going to see 3 wrecks. It's like every 10 miles there's a wreck.
Every time. I've had some Uber drivers there that scare the crap out of me. So I usually rent a car. Like if I'm going to die on a highway, I want to be in control of my own destiny at least. I don't want some guy driving me in an Uber going 120 miles an hour, which has happened to me there before. So be careful. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think they don't have state inspections for their cars either, so that just adds another layer to everything.
Nobody. It is a good point. Like, if you want to enjoy South Beach, stay in South Beach because
Right.
it's not near the arena. Like it's a ways.
Yes.
I mean, even if you're staying in Lauderdale on the beach, it's still a ways.
It really is. Yeah, it's longer than people think.
Yeah. And to round out this segment, number 6, Nashville. It is, like you said, pretty much the drinking capital of the world. It's a place that, if my wife and I are looking at a place on our list of where we want to go without the kids for a weekend, long weekend, I think Nashville's right up our alley. It looks like a lot of fun. I think Broadway, the old 2-9er, I think is pretty fond of Broadway. I think there's a couple other people probably in hockey that are fond of Broadway. So that's all they can talk about during the 2017 Stanley Cup final. So
I've seen more
Canadians
people...
act like they've never seen beer before. Like, oh my God, like Nashville. It's like,
it's true.
Yeah, right. They couldn't.
They really do. My favorite thing about Nashville is just it's not really like anywhere else. When you're there, you know exactly where you are when you're in Nashville. The public drunkenness on display. If that kind of thing bothers you, then Nashville is probably not for you. I find it entertaining myself. Just that strip of Broadway, if you haven't been there, it's not really like anywhere else. There's just live music on both sides, and the arena is literally right on Broadway, right in the middle of Broadway. In fact, it's nothing special. It's a pretty average building. It's fine, but you can't beat the location. I certainly have some fond memories covering the Stanley Cup final there in 2017. Man, half of the Pittsburgh media needed a liver transplant after that series. Let me tell you, wild times indeed. But it's just if you've never been there, you got to go.
It's like Times Square on New Year's Eve,
on a Tuesday,
every day of the week.
Yeah, right.
There's literally there's probably 20 bars within 4 blocks of each other that all have live music.
Yeah,
and people hanging out just. Like you can hear it from all of them out to the street, and the public drunkenness. It's not obnoxious, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, like at 11 a.m. last time I was there, me and my friends, we saw between 7 to 10 either trolleys or big SUV limousines with bachelorette parties, all like twerking or doing whatever, just chaos before noon. Literally before noon, there was hordes of if you're a single guy, that's where to go. Because there's some ladies who've lost all inhibitions down there.
Yes, no question about that. It's a city unlike any other. And much like Raleigh, the barbecue is great if you're into that. A lot of really cool restaurants. And it's one of the few places, like if you want to see the Penguins and even the coaches out drinking the night before the game, you'll see it in Nashville. Everybody likes to go out to Tootsie's in Nashville the night before games. It's just so much fun there. And I will say this as well. Southern markets get a bad rap sometimes for not being good hockey towns. Nashville's a good hockey town. They fill up Bridgestone Arena every single game. It's always a sellout. It's a loud crowd. I really enjoy covering games there. It's and again, we got direct flights on Southwest from Pittsburgh to Nashville, really cheap. It's easy to get there. Nice little airport to deal with. One problem with Nashville, the hotel prices can be unbelievable. They're not quite as bad as they were a few years ago because they have a lot more hotels now, which they really needed. But man, I have spent a lot of the company's money on Nashville hotels over the years.
The passion is there. Some elderly woman tried to fight me because I was wearing a Penguin jersey. This is before the fight. This is before we played them in the finals. She probably would have stabbed me. No, and there's actually a cigar lounge in the airport in Nashville. That's how cool Nashville is. Yeah. Nashville's a great city, and actually that's where Sully and Rick Taka came out and saw me. In Nashville. Yeah. They got the old Ricky T goes, "You got a hat trick tonight, baby."
It's a great city. See Joe Bartnick there perhaps at some point in the future.
Yeah, I should have moved there before everyone did.
Yeah, now everybody's
Right, the
doing it, right?
pandemic, it was
Burn
really
live
like
there?
I was thinking like, oh, I should move there.
The
I'm
tax
thinking about moving there.
situation is advantageous there. So yes, a
Yeah,
lot of
now
people.
it's done. Now it's too much now. It's like it's too much. What the real this is way no one cares. But I didn't move there because I think I still need to drive. And I'm not moving anywhere again where I have to drive.
Fair enough.
Unless it's
Yeah.
a beach. Like I'm not moving to a city where I
Right.
have to drive.
That makes
We have
sense.
to drive. Yeah, that's fair. And doesn't Steve Byrne? Didn't Steve?
He
Byrne
does.
like
Steve
He
Burns.
does,
Penguins legend.
Yeah.
Steve Byrne. So I know I see him posting. He does plenty of shows there because it's his home turf.
Oh yeah, and shout out to Steve Byrne and his dad. It's on the topic of everyone's mind. I walked in the green room. I go, "Oh, hi, Mr. Byrne." He was down in Tampa, and we were there. And he goes, "Wait, what's going to happen with Sid?" We talked for a half hour, and Steve's like, "I knew that Bartnick could talk to my dad for hours about the Penguins."
You
Like,
mean the dad?
it was like it was almost like Steve was tired of talking about it, And he's like, "I know if Bartnick gets here." Then
By the way, Joe, speaking of comedians, I don't know if you noticed, Pomp mentioned during the game the other night, the Steelers' new punter looks exactly like Bill Burr. You need to bring this up with him. He looks
well,
just
that
like
was
him.
he was on Denver last year, wasn't he? That guy.
Somewhere out west.
Yeah, because like that made the big rounds of like a year ago, maybe. That
Okay.
Hey, this guy looks like Burr.
He really
completely
does.
At least he could kick. Thank
Yeah,
God.
he's good. He was the one bright spot.
I will say, because usually people beat that kind of stuff into the ground, like, oh, this kicker looks like Bill Burr, and and I looked at him like, oh my God, like it looks a lot like that. Like it's really, really close. But when Bill comes on the show, you can assure him we will not talk about how he looks like the Steelers.
Oh my God. That's just the fifth thing not to talk to him about.
All Samuelson being number one.
Yes.
But yeah, so all right, well, that'll do it for this show. If you want to email the show, you can actually email us at contact@twofortalking.com because we have a website now. So you can go to www.twofortalking.com. Check out the show there. You can, listen, sign up for updates, all that kind of stuff. Joe's going to put some articles out there, and we'll get some other stuff going. So, I appreciate it, guys, and we appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.